Well, the manhunt continues this morning for the man who shot a Lee's Summit police officer on Sunday night. Charges have been filed by Jackson County Prosecutor Melissa Johnson. Thomas Tolbert, charged with first-degree assault, second-degree domestic assault, armed criminal action, unlawful possession of a firearm, and resisting arrest. The officer remains in serious condition, and law enforcement agencies in the region are continuing to search for Thomas Tolbert. He is a 27-year-old black male, last seen in basically all black. And what happened on Sunday night, and we told you about this, and it's been the lead story in Kansas City since yesterday, an officer approached the suspect in the parking lot of the apartment complex in Lee's Summit, attempted to detain him, and that is when Tolbert broke away and began running on foot with the officer running after him. So there's a new development here to all this that I have not seen local media pick up yet on. And this will not shock you one bit as we get it rolling on a rainy Tuesday, 6:06 here on KCMO Talk Radio. Brad Lemon, the Fraternal Order of Police president for KCPD, shared this yesterday on his Facebook page about this guy, Thomas Tolbert. That back in 2019, this a-hole, I'm reading Brad Lemon's Facebook post here, so no need to hit the dump button this early, Mark, okay? I'm censoring Brad's Facebook post because Brad just doesn't hold back, man.
Very well, very well.
He comes on the air and he, sounds all professional, a little soft-spoken. You get him on Facebook, you get him off the air, different guy. It's hilarious. Anyway, he writes here, in 2019, Thomas Tolbert led KCPD officers in a car chase, jumped out of his car, and started shooting at the police. The officers returned fire, wounding him and placing him in custody. Former Jackson County Prosecutor Gene Peters Baker hated the police and offered him an offered plea and gave him just over 1 year in prison. He immediately returned to beating the women in his life. Lemon goes on to write, last night he again shot at and struck a Lee's Summit police officer. Thankfully, the officer survived and will recover, but it should have never happened. This monster should still be in custody. But Gene Peters Baker's hate for police officers once again reared its ugly head. Thankfully, she moved out of town after she laid waste to Jackson County. Too bad she doesn't have to deal with the garbage she created. Be careful, brothers and sisters. That is the post from Brad Lemon, the Fraternal Order of Police president for KCPD. So I went through all the local TV stations this morning, and I didn't see an extensive breakdown of his 2019 incident with KCPD, where he also shot at those officers. They returned fire and they wounded him. They placed him in custody, and Gene Peters Baker slapped him with 1 year in prison.
Yesterday, Keatsman and I recognized that it looked like a mugshot that they were putting out there, so we knew that he had done something in his past. We just weren't sure what.
Yeah, that's a very good point, since, of course, Thomas Tolbert is still on the run. Last seen with a black top with a hood and black shorts, and armed with an unknown color 10-millimeter handgun.
Now, we did have a variety of reports. One station said that the police didn't know him, but the first report I read of the day from KSHB said the police knew who he was as he fled the scene. And they knew that he was known to shoot at officers, although it didn't cite a specific instance.
Good point. I'm glad you brought that up. I will give some credit where it's due to...
Yeah.
They're still woke 41, though, okay? They're still woke 41. But yes, credit where it's due. So you've got now this guy's background being front and center as the chase continues for this man, and who knows where he is. We don't know if he's in the Kansas City area. Lee's Summit Police, of course, are doing their best, along with regional law enforcement, to try to track this guy down. But this is the kind of stuff that needs to get out there about how soft on crime policies end up hurting innocent people. You have a woman who is involved with domestic violence. You have a police officer who looks like he's going to live, but is still dealing with serious injuries in the hospital, and if not for his bulletproof vest, is dead today. You got a Leaf Summit cop who, according to multiple reports, one of the shots that hit him was right above his heart, but it caught his bulletproof vest. This guy was inches away from losing his life. And this is where last week when we were talking about, hey, it's the 5-year anniversary of George Floyd. We're here half a decade later, and how has the world changed? Well, the world got really stupid. I think things are starting to smarten up a little bit. Not a ton. It really depends where you are. But when you look at how crime impacted those who are most vulnerable in Kansas City in particular, well, it was the people living in poverty. It was the people living largely in high crime areas already in Kansas City. They were the ones who were getting impacted the most. It wasn't the Wokadoks on the plaza. It wasn't the people largely in parts of Kansas City that don't actually deal with any crime but can put up their yard signs. Those are not the people who were impacted in large part by all this. And this guy is just one example of how when you let people off the hook, when you slap them on the wrist, when you treat them with kid gloves, they don't learn their lesson. They just don't. So we're following that story this morning here on KCMO Talk Radio, and I would love to give you some updates on potentially an arrest of this individual, but for now, he is still at large. Now, speaking of violent incidents in Kansas City, several people are suing the individuals and companies connected with the 2024 Chiefs Parade shooting. This comes yesterday, Fox 4 reporting here that Erica Reyes is suing on behalf of herself and her 2 children. All 3 of them were shot during the parade on February 14, 2024, according to a lawsuit filed yesterday in Jackson County. Kathleen Martinez is suing on behalf of herself and her children, one of which was shot during the parade. And Esmeralda Ortiz is suing on behalf of herself and her child. Neither of them were shot during the parade, but the lawsuit alleges that the 2 suffered severe emotional distress and anxiety after watching their family get shot. Now, I can't imagine what these people have been through. Attorneys told Fox 4 the plaintiffs in the lawsuit are family. 2 of them are cousins. 2 are related by marriage, according to attorneys. I can't imagine what they've been through. But in the overly litigious society that we find ourselves in right now, are we going to sit here and say that this is the fault of Kansas City, Missouri, of Union Station, of the Sports Commission? I don't see any evidence to suggest that based on how much we've followed this story over the last year and a half. According to the lawsuit, the deadly shooting was the direct and proximate result of negligence, carelessness, violations, and failures of Kansas City, Missouri, and Union Station, as well as the greater Kansas City Sports Commission. You know, if you want to make sure that Kansas City can't ever do anything and that cities in general can't ever host events, this is how you go about doing it, trying to basically make sure they have to pay out millions of dollars when we had, 800-something cops out there from every jurisdiction around Kansas City? I'm not sure what more they could have done.
I was with you there. I was like, wow, it took a little while to put this all together, I guess. And then the list of people there, I'm like, well, I'm not sure how you connect those things. I think they did everything they could, it's just evil.
That's what it is. And if you want to hide out in a bunker all day, you have every right to do that. If you want to go out into society, there are risks that come along with that. Now, you have to take calculated risks, right? I wouldn't get on an airplane if I knew the other 200 people on the plane didn't go through TSA, although TSA is a joke, so maybe that's a bad example, but you get the point, right? You've got to pick and choose how much risk in everyday life you're willing to take. There are summer festivals happening. There are parades happening. There are rodeos happening every single weekend for the next few weeks.
Zip lining in the Ozarks, hang gliding in Puerto Rico or Jamaica.
Yeah, you can do all of it.
Anything.
And you've got to figure out how much risk you are willing to take. If you go to your July 4th parade coming up and God forbid something happens like what happened in that Illinois town a couple of years ago, a crazed man in his car driving through the parade and harming people and killing some people, is that the city's fault? I mean, how much protection can you ultimately expect, or should you ultimately expect, from your city, from Union Station at an event like this? I'm not saying any of us could have predicted this. I'm not saying any of this was foreseeable. It wasn't. But when you're Kansas City, Missouri, and you've got 800 police officers spread out throughout that rally and that parade, you can't. There's a lot of things to criticize Kansas City, Missouri for. You cannot sit here and say that Kansas City, Missouri let down the people there that day because they didn't have enough law enforcement. I don't believe you can make that claim.
I'm with you there. I was going to say 800 might be more than the total Kansas City Police Department. And my point being that we brought in officers were hired from other jurisdictions and areas to help out.
Yeah, they came from both sides of the state line. It's not like this was slapstick together. We had done these parades on multiple occasions over the last decade, and now to sit there and sue Kansas City, Missouri, a year and a half after the fact, I will add as well. The timeline on that is kind of weird. And then you get into a spot where you've got to sit there and say to yourself, what more could Union Station have done? I'm not buying that. I'm not. And it's not that I want to have Kansas City's back in any of this, but I don't think this is at all a fair lawsuit. And all it will do is dissuade cities and municipalities from hosting any kind of event that could be beneficial for their residents. 913-408-7957 is how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We're always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. We'll get to you on this coming up here on a Tuesday morning. The rain is falling around Kansas City, and we're glad that you are with us. We also have to share with you the comical lead story I saw yesterday on a national level that hopefully will make you react the same way it made me react. We'll get to it all coming up next.
On Tuesday's Guy Benson Show from Minnesota, we'll be in the homeland of jazz hands. Tim Walz, we'll talk about him. Tommy Lahren joins the program coming up at 2 o'clock on KCMO.
Oh, you got to love that. Guy Benson, ready for Mr. Jazz Hands. Tim Walz. Last night we were watching Greg Gutfeld's show, and they teased an upcoming segment, and they called Tim Walz Tampon Tim. And Kate said to me, she goes, I never understood the Tampon Tim thing. Who's Tampon Tim? What is it? I said, oh, well, he was the governor of Minnesota. And when he was governor, he allowed tampons into the men's bathroom. So this came probably last August when Kamala Harris selected him as her running mate. That became one of the early nicknames for then vice presidential candidate Tim Walz, as Tampon Tim. I never used it, but I take that back. I used it early on once or twice, and then I kind of got bored with it. So I never used it a lot, but it still is hanging around. Yeah, so there you go. Nice job by Guy Benson. He's coming to Kansas City next Thursday. We've got like less than 10 tickets left to buy for our event with Guy Benson at Boulevard Brewing. Meet and greet, dinner, drinks, the whole deal. We're going to have a great time, and you still have some tickets left to buy if you want at KCMOTalkRadio.com. Now, speaking of the national news cycle, I can't believe this is still the headline story on the Drudge Report. You know, I'm doing my research last night, took the girls to their first ever softball practice, and it was like an instructional deal.
Fun.
Oh, they loved it. I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but I could bring them both because it was like from ages 4 to 6, so I brought both of them last night. And they had a blast. I think my younger one liked playing in the dirt more than anything else. But either way, they had a great time. So I get home, I'm going through the local news, watching some of the local news and checking out some of the national news. And I still go to Drudge Report, even though Drudge is totally a shell of what he used to be. They basically hate Trump now. But I still listen. I go to CNN. I go to a bunch of different websites to see what's going on. But this was, and still is right now, the lead story on the Drudge Report. Headline, exclusive FEMA staff confused after head said he was unaware of U.S. hurricane season. So I'm like, okay, what is this all about? It's from Reuters. And the article reads as follows. Staff of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, that's FEMA, were left baffled on Monday after the head of the U.S. Disaster Agency said he had not been aware the country has a hurricane season, according to 4 sources familiar with the situation. The remark was made during a briefing by David Richardson, who has led FEMA since early May. It was not clear to staff whether he meant it literally as a joke or in some other context. You can't be serious. You're telling me that Reuters is writing this piece from anonymous staffers at FEMA who heard the new guy in charge say he wasn't aware the country has a hurricane season. And then you write, well, it's not clear to staff whether he meant it literally or in some other context, like as a joke. What do you think? Like, with all due respect, what do you there are definitely some idiots in this story. And it's not the head of FEMA here. It's not David Richardson. I promise you that. This is, how does Reuters even get a hold of such a made-up story like this? Do you really believe that the guy who has been put in charge of FEMA said with a straight face he was unaware that there were hurricanes? I have a 6-year-old who is aware of hurricanes. She has asked about hurricanes in the last month. I don't know where she got the information from, but she was asking about tornadoes and hurricanes, and I explained it to a 6-year-old. This harkens back to Trump 1.0, when they would just find any reason whatsoever to write an absolutely absurd story that doesn't pass any kind of smell test about either Trump or somebody who may have 6 degrees of separation from Donald Trump. And the ultimate goal here is to point out, oh my goodness, look at the cuts and DOGE, and they're trying to slim down the government. And when you slim down the federal government, you get people in charge of FEMA who don't know that we have hurricanes in this country. And then you're supposed to believe this. That may be the worst part of all this. They think that you're going to believe this. Because any attempt to trim down the size of our federal government means that we have to have people like this in charge of FEMA who apparently don't know that we have hurricanes in America in the late summer, early fall. How foolish do you have to be to buy any of this? And this still this morning is the headline story on the Drudge Report. Go figure. That is an absolute embarrassment. But you know what? It also, sadly for Drudge, has become par for the course. On the text line, Pete, I'll take sarcasm for 500, please. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. I'm sure this guy was in his meeting and he had some woke staffers in there and he was like, someone asked, sir, did you know that it was hurricane season coming up? And he said, oh, do we have hurricanes around here? I didn't know. And then they ran to Reuters and they're like, the new FEMA chief doesn't know anything about hurricanes, John.
Well, I guess they're used to Biden, maybe. Now they're going to use that excuse. Well, we can't be sure.
Yeah, we can't. Yeah. After Joe was running the show for the last 4 years, I don't know what's
lost in the closet.
Yeah, don't know what's satire, what's sarcasm, what's up, what's down. Go figure. But this is just a classic example of a national media publication, courtesy of anonymous sources, rolling with, got to make Trump look bad here. Got to make this administration look bad. Please spare me. Got some new polling, but no, it's not boring polling. You're not going to sit here and say polling. What are we talking about polling for? It's, June 3rd of 2025. What possibly could we be talking about on the polling front? No. This is more about your mental health based on your political ideology. And this is a fascinating poll. This is from Nate Silver's Silver Bulletin. Dropping here, self-reported mental health by political ideology. 51% of conservatives call their mental health excellent. The best, some may say. Only 20% of liberals call their mental health excellent. How many would refer to their mental health as being poor right now? 45% of liberals say their mental health is poor. And 19% of conservatives say their mental health is poor. Now, you might sit there and say, well, that's just driven by the ideology and who's in charge right now, and the Trump derangement syndrome certainly has people all bent out of shape. But I don't think that's what's going on here. I don't. I don't think it's simply like, hey, Trump's in power, therefore people who are self-identified liberals view themselves right now as having poor mental health. So I don't buy that at all. I think it's actually part of a broader identification crisis that we find ourselves in that's driven by America. Now, who's in charge has some impact on that. But Bill Maher was talking about this on his show a couple of weeks ago. Not this poll, because this poll just came out yesterday. But this idea that there is one political party motivated heavily by its base that can't stand the idea of America. And Bill Maher called him out on it, by the way, to his credit.
Seriously, this is a serious problem for Democrats. Less than 1 in 4 Democrats under 30 say they're proud to be an American. 54% say they're embarrassed by it. Embarrassed? Like America's your mom picking you up at school? You're embarrassed to be an American? Well, guess what? The feeling's mutual, because you have no perspective. Is America perfect? No, of course not. No country is.
When you have been taught that America is not the greatest experiment in the history of mankind, and when you have been taught, in large part, that America is a flawed, failed, and frankly, in many cases, some believe evil place, well, of course, you're not going to be that high on your own country, and therefore, you might perceive the culture around you and the society around you to be lacking. You might perceive it to be a place that is not the land of the free and the land of great opportunity. You don't perceive it that way. So if you think everything around you is evil and awful, well, you're more likely to put yourself in a position where you say, oh, man, my mental health's struggling. I'm in this country. It's not looking out for me, not doing anything for me. It's a bad place to be. And until we fix it, well, I don't see how I can look at this country and look at my homeland in any kind of positive light. And that's having a major impact on my mental health, John.
Yeah, we talk about what is learned at school, and we probably have focused too much on America's downside, so that's what's dwelled on, if history is taught at all. But then you go into the echo chamber of social media here in the last, 15, 20 years.
Yes, you're right. That's only made it worse, because then you can really just basically sympathize with people who are exactly like-minded to you.
America sucks. Social media says, I know, right?
Yeah, that's so true. So that poll didn't surprise me when I saw it yesterday from Nate Silver. And I don't believe it's as simple as like, well, Republicans feel their mental health is better now because they've got political power and Democrats don't have any, so they're down on their mental health. I would venture, and I have not seen Nate Silver do this poll before, but I would venture to guess that even during the Biden years, those who self-identify as conservatives likely have a better view of their own mental health than those who identify as liberals. Because it's not about really just who's in the White House. That's only a very small part of it. Now, also, another poll dropped yesterday from CNN and NBC. And it says here, which party is the party of the middle class? We are now in a tie between the Republicans and the Democrats. This polling goes back to 1989. And back in 1989, the Democrats had a 23-point edge in this number of Americans who viewed them as the party of the middle class. Go to 2016. Of course, Trump won the first time around. Democrats still had a 17-point edge in being the party of the middle class. By 2022, the Democrats' edge was down to 4 points. And now it is dead even. It is a tie between Republicans and Democrats. Democrats over the last 35 years have lost 23 points in this poll. as being the party of the middle class, from plus 23 to now dead even. Ask yourself why that might be. Well, I think Biden did massive damage over his 4 years, but it was already happening. It was trending this way already. And when you acquiesce to a group of people who are more interested in making sure that boys can be girls and girls can be boys, and pandering to the most progressive base of your party, well, you lose a lot of regular people. You lose a lot of those working class, everyday folks who are just out there saying, you know what? I mean, yeah, I thought the Democratic Party had my back. I liked the party under Bill Clinton. I even might have liked it and thought it had some opportunities under Barack Obama, although that's when it started to end. But the awakening of the last few years and pandering to, frankly, those who don't want to work and the elite of the elite, that does not connect with everyday Americans. It doesn't do it. And to tie this back to Bill Maher, who I just played a clip of here a few minutes ago, in that same monologue, Bill Maher from just a couple of weeks ago was warning his preferred political party. Listen, Bill Maher is not going to be a guy out there who's some rock-ribbed conservative. That's not who he is. He was warning his own party to stop listening to the crazy. The crazy when it comes to economic policy, the crazy when it comes to the anti-Semitism that is more rampant by the day, the crazy when it comes to foreign policy and simping for Hamas. Bill Maher was on it.
Liberals need to push back on the dumb ideas that come from their children. The Democrats' problem is the energy of the parties with the young and the young are with the terrorists. That's not good. So talk to your children and remind them you don't really want to live like your heroes in Hamas. All the you do all day, it was all made in America. Your smartphone, your Grubhub, your freedom to bitch about America, that's all American stuff. You tell your phone you want a milkshake and a guy brings it to your house. Please.
Yeah, how would that work on the Gaza Strip right now? Not too well. At all.
It's kind of like chasing your shadow, I guess, when you're out there cultivating the fringe vote, then the middle starts to dissipate.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It's like a little kid when you chase your shadow. Well, you keep moving around. And
that's what they've done to themselves.
Yeah.
Exactly right. They've done this to themselves. They've lost the middle class. Now, if there is a side of this that the Republican Party has to figure out, if they are going to be the party that is the bigger 10 party, that is attractive, more attractive every day to the middle class, a more diverse party than it's ever been, that's great. But the only downside to that is that in off-year elections, you're going to have a harder time getting your voters out. One trend that you are seeing is that Republican voters are becoming less likely than Democratic voters to show up in elections that are not presidential elections. That is something that Republicans are going to have to figure out how to re-engage their new voters and get them out to the polls when someone named Donald Trump is not at the top of the ticket and Donald Trump is not on the ballot. And frankly, I don't believe the Republican Party has figured that out yet. I don't think they've figured out what to do about it. I think they're aware of it, obviously, but they don't really have a strategy for how to motivate the 70-plus million people that showed up for Trump last year to get out there in midterms and school board races and things of that nature. Because it's a voting bloc that is less likely to vote in every one of these local elections. As the Democrats become more and more the party of the elite, they're the ones who are going to clean up in a lot of these local races. And Republicans have to figure out a strategy to combat that. Imagine how much Bill O'Reilly sticks out like a sore thumb in Tokyo. I mean, talk about a fish out of water, man.
Was he like 6'2"?
Yeah,
right?
6'4". He's huge. He's pushing 6'5". So just something about Bill and the bombastic nature and approach to which he does everything probably stands out in a place like Tokyo. I'm just going to leave that. And I'm going to reach out to Bill today, try to get him on the show to talk about that trip overseas. As soon as we can get him on here on KCMO Talk Radio. He's also on with the No Spin News, 8 p.m. on weeknights. So it's Taco Tuesday, and for many, this will be another chance to mock Donald Trump. This TACO acronym that has taken off over the last week and a half. Trump always chickens out. This has been used by his political opponents as a way to say, oh, here's Trump, big tough talking guy with the tariffs. But when push comes to shove, he backs off. Well, which way do you want it? The same people who are leaning into TACO are the ones who in early April were insisting the world was going to end. Sell all your stocks. Unload it all. Don't use it as a buying opportunity. Your retirement is sunk. It's over. The world is ending. And it's because of Donald Trump's tariffs. And then, over the next several weeks, Trump cuts a couple of deals. He then also, gives some more time to negotiate. And those same people are like, see, he's a chicken. Wait, hold on. Which one is it?
Mm-hmm.
You cannot sit there and say Trump going ahead with tariffs is the most irresponsible thing he could ever do. And oh my goodness, what is wrong with him?
How dare you?
And then when he backs off temporarily as part of his negotiating strategy, sit there and say, what a chicken bleep. This guy, he doesn't have the backbone to stand up to the bad guys and stick with his tariffs. Well, wait, hold on. You were the same people going nuts about this, 6-7 weeks ago, insisting that this was going to be the end of the United States of America and the rest of the world was going to hate us and this was irresponsible and how dare we? And now, he's massaging the situation. He's, picking and choosing some of his battles. He realizes the real enemy here is China, and he's doing some wheeling and dealing. And now he's a chicken? If anything, it would seem to me that the conservative, or at least the conservative base that is supporting Trump, would be the ones who might be able to argue, hey, the Peter Navarros of the world, hey, this guy, hey, Trump, don't be a chicken, stick to the tariffs. But it's the people on the left who hated the tariffs from day one because anything Trump tries to do has got to be the worst thing known to mankind, according to them. So their whole TACO thing doesn't actually make any sense.
None whatsoever. A boxer ducking a jab is chickening out, right, to them.
Yeah.
Right? No, that's how you set up a negotiation, You stretch the parameter, and you think that we're weak, but the other company's like, hey, we don't want this crap. I don't think this guy's kidding. Let's talk.
Yes.
We'll talk.
Let's get to the negotiating table. Mm-hmm. That's what this is all about.
The table that you want to seat at, all you Marxists.
Oh, man, that's so good. So I have some people around the office that love to drop the TACO thing on me, but they're the same ones who in early April were like, oh, man, I don't think we're going to make it. We're never going to have another sale ever again here at KCMO because of Trump and the tariffs. Oh, my gosh, the world's going to end. Now they love TACO. Okay, guys. All right. Pump the brakes. Realize your own hypocrisy for a second, but that would require you to look in the mirror. Now, speaking of looking in the mirror, I would love for some media to do this when it comes to Elon Musk. The Wall Street Journal writing yesterday that Elon Musk was the lowest paid chief executive of an S&P 500 company last year. Tesla paid him $0. The Wall Street Journal notes it's been that way for several years amid a legal battle over a monster stock award back in 2018. A court has twice thrown out Musk's pay package, calling the process of creating it flawed, despite 2 votes of support from shareholders. Elon shared this yesterday and said $0 for 7 years, despite increasing the value of the company by $2,000. Huh. Some Nazi this Elon Musk guy is, huh? I mean, he really stinks at this whole thing. Trying to take down the government, one Doge employee at a time, giving Nazi salutes, the whole thing. But here he is as arguably the Einstein of our generation and another guy who was treated like dirt. Oh, do we have some breaking news here?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me look at this. Thank you, fellas.
Cancel that blue alert.
Okay.
Got the guy.
They got the SOB. Very good.
In Ellis, Kansas.
All right.
Seems like he was heading to Colorado, possibly.
There you go. Thomas Tolbert, the man who allegedly shot the Lee Summit police officer on Sunday night, has been caught in Ellis, Kansas. And population 1,921, right there off I-70 out west of Hayes. So, yeah, Mark, maybe he was heading out there towards Colorado. But they got him. Well done. How about a round of applause here for the men and women of law enforcement? Well done, everybody. Well done. Get him back here pronto. Let Melissa Johnson go to town on this guy. Let's go. Book him, Dano. 7:52. They have caught Thomas Tolbert. The blue alert has ended for a man believed to have been the one who shot a Missouri police officer on Sunday night. Kansas Bureau of Investigation making the report and the announcement this morning. According to a press release, the alert was canceled in the last 30 minutes when 27-year-old Thomas Eugene Tolbert was found and arrested in Ellis, Kansas, just off I-70 west of Hayes. He is the one who was accused of shooting a Lee Summit police officer on Sunday night outside of an apartment complex in what was a domestic dispute. So KCTV5 reports here, law enforcement officials were notified early this morning that Tolbert might be in an Ellis, Kansas hotel. The Hayes Police Department, Ellis County Sheriff's Office, and KBI responded to the hotel and were able to take him into custody at about 4:50 this morning. Listen, I don't want to help criminals evade law enforcement, alleged criminals evade law enforcement. But how dumb do you have to be the most wanted man in the entire region, having your mugshot plastered all over local news, and decide you're going to check into a hotel in Ellis, Kansas?
The one hotel in town.
Well, yeah, and you're like the third black guy to ever show up in Ellis, Kansas. Let's just be honest here. I looked it up in the last few minutes. Ellis, Kansas has a population of 1,958, and the black population in Ellis, Kansas is 0.15%. I did the math. That means there are 2.9 black people in Ellis, Kansas.
Maybe somebody's pregnant.
2.937, I think, is the exact number. Let's round it up. 3 black people in Ellis, Kansas. You show up when your mugshot's plastered all over the news. Now, I know in Hayes, they're not getting Kansas City news. They're probably getting Wichita news, I would imagine, maybe Topeka. I don't know for sure. But this news story has been blasted all over the entire region. I got a push notification from law enforcement. I'm sure we all did yesterday on our cell phones. I got one after we got off the air, I think it was. I got one middle of the afternoon. I was at the gym. I got one at like 4 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock on this guy. So we haven't had something like this in a while where the entire region, multiple states, are searching for this one man who shot a cop. What does this guy do? He checks into a hotel, sticking out like a sore thumb in the one hotel in Ellis, Kansas. I mean, man, you have got to be so dense.
He could have at least gone to the Ellis Lakeside Campground.
I mean, something. Sleep in your car. Now, I'm glad he's a fool. I'm so glad he was caught. Get him back here and make sure that Jackson County Prosecutor Melissa Johnson, just goes to town on this guy in a way that Jean Peters Baker never did 6 years ago.
Well, she's already filed the charges, so that's step one right there. Yeah, ahead of JPB.
She has filed the charges here in Jackson
Before
County.
they had him in custody. Now they do.
She did this yesterday against Thomas Tolbert. First-degree assault, second-degree domestic assault, armed criminal action, unlawful possession of a firearm, and resisting arrest. Get him back here and go to town, Melissa Johnson. But, boy, I'm glad these guys are just complete and utter fools. Hey, what should I do? Gosh, I need to rest. Where do I rest? Should I keep going to Denver? might not stick it. I'm just going to crash in Ellis, Kansas tonight.
Say this exit with the largest ball of twine looks interesting.
The Ellis Railroad Museum's very nice.
There you go. Yeah, sure. I like trains. Pete likes trains. Pete Buttigieg, that is.
I mean, you have just got to be an absolute fool if you're Thomas Tolbert to stop at Ellis, Kansas, of all places. Man, I'll tell you what, these guys, you can't make them up. Oh, my gosh. Get his butt back here as quick as you can and make sure that he does not see daylight ever again in his adult life. I don't know if that's possible. He's only 27 years old. But you know what? Better be a long time before this guy is smelling freedom, as far as I'm concerned. Wow. Good job out there at Ellis, Kansas, by the way. I don't know who it was. If it was the front desk person at the one hotel in Ellis who was like, this doesn't feel right. Oh, that's him. Okay, let's call the I don't know. We'll find out more. But, man, good thing this guy's not a Mensa member. I'll leave it at that. So I get these things in my social media feed. It's based on what the algorithm thinks you would like. And I've been seeing a lot of this over the last couple of days about how there are nearly 500,000 more sellers than buyers right now in the housing market. Now, some people are going to look at this and say, it's a buying opportunity. There are more sellers than buyers. And these are the highest numbers we've seen since these started to get tracked over a decade ago. The other way to look at this is buyers are basically just sitting on the sidelines because it's too expensive to own a home right now. Interest rates are high. Now, they're not historically high, but they're still pretty high. And the prices on the homes have not reflected the higher rates. They just really haven't come down. Obviously, we know that home ownership and demand for homes skyrocketed after COVID. There was a lot of things happening after COVID. After COVID, you had not only people realizing, hey, I don't have to live in a shoebox in an urban setting. I can work from home. I want some more space. You also had millennials coming of age, having families, looking for that suburban lifestyle. All these things came to a head at once after COVID. And that's what drove a lot of the craziness in the housing market. Well, now it's starting to slow down. Now, do I think there's going to be some massive real estate crash, i.e. 2008? I don't, because I still think that when prices come down, demand on the buyer side is going to spike once again, where people are going to say, I can afford to own a home. Right now, I mean, you got to be making into the six figures to afford an average home in this country all in. When you talk about how the price of home ownership has gone up, not just in terms of, getting the down payment, but the insurance rates have gone up tremendously. The property taxes continue to go up. All these things are happening and people are feeling like they're priced out. So what's the potential fear here? The fear here is that the frothy nature in which our local governments have been living with over the last half decade is going to have to end. The question is, how does it end? Does it come to a crashing halt? Is it ugly? Or do they kind of wake up, realize they've been greedy and they've been reckless for the last few years and they've got to slow down? Or do they just say full steam ahead and we're going to crash this thing right into the wall? I don't know what they end up doing, but I do know that when you look at, like last night, Overland Park proposed its 2026 budget, and you see that property tax revenues are now $93.5 million for 2026, when for 2025 they were $88 million. As recently as 2018, they were $52 million. Do the math. That's an 80% increase in property tax revenues from Overland Park residents over the last 8 years. That's unsustainable. And what does Overland Park say? Our mill rate's lower than others. People don't pay their taxes in mill rates. They pay them in real dollars. And what Overland Park is doing here is fleecing, I believe, the taxpayer while trying to sell you this idea that, well, at least we're not as bad on our rates as Lenexa. So I asked Dave Trabert about this morning. He was on Kansas Policy Institute, and he reacted to this news out of Overland Park that also showed their revenues, total revenues for Overland Park, Kansas, that were $292 million back in 2018, increasing to $498 million in 2026. Do the math. That is a 40% increase in their total revenues over the last 8 years. And I'll get to the population numbers or lack thereof coming up as well.
And they're sitting on tens of millions of dollars in cash reserves, which is money they've taken in but not spent. And that just goes to underscore my point about Prairie Village. Government will continue to spend, and without regard to what the public wants or without regard to what is necessary to efficiently provide services.
Dave Trabert knocked it out of the park with that last comment there. They don't care about what is necessary to provide just the services for the residents. That made a place like Overland Park so great. That saw Overland Park grow tremendously from 2000, when it had a population of 150,000 people, to 2020, when it increased to 197,000 people. That's a big spike, right? That's about a 30% population increase. Here's the thing. Based on some of the numbers right now, Overland Park's not growing. They're sitting right around that 197,000 range. In 2020, they were at 197,238. The 2023 estimate that I'm looking at here is 197,089. They lost 200 people. What does that tell you? But despite the fact that over the last few years, they've really been stable when it comes to population growth, their spending's not slowing down. So you do the math. What then has to happen? They have to take more from the people that they have if they're not growing the population at the pace they're growing government spending. Or they have to figure out how to attract someone like the Royals that will draw people to spend in their municipality to continue to grow government at the pace in which they're growing government. It's an unsustainable model. And all the people in charge seem to be whistling right past the graveyard on this whole thing.